evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Dennis Stockman, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Kylie Hassey. We warmly welcome the family of Squadron leader Arthur John Sharp, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Club Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Squadron Leader Arthur John Sharp. Arthur Sharp was born on the 21st of February 1916, the only child of Alan and Alice Sharp of Forbes. He grew up on the family property Pine Park near Forbes and went to work as a farmer and a grazier. Sharp enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force as an aircrew trainee on the 27th of May 1940. He was promoted to temporary sergeant in January 1941 and the following July received his commission as a pilot officer. On the 15th of August 1941, Arthur Sharp married Margaret Huffin in St Stephen's Church, Sydney. Arthur and his best man, pilot John Venn, had to fly in for the occasion. Arthur and Margaret later had 2 children, Diane and Brian. By early 1942, Sharp was a member of No. 7 Squadron, flying Hudsons on anti-submarine patrols and convoy escorts off Australia's east coast. In March, he was transferred to the No. 2 Squadron. During 1942, No. 2 Squadron maintained an intense bombing campaign against Japan, shipping and installations on islands including Timor and Ambon from May to October. The squadron was eventually awarded a United States Presidential Unit citation. On the 15th of June 1942, Sharp was part of a strike on enemy targets at Kapang, the administrative centre of Dutch Timor. When he reached the target area, his port engine failed. After dumping his bombs and some fuel, he discovered that the starboard engine would not make full power. Rather than attempting a forced landing in Timor and risking capture, he attempted to reach base, which was over 700 kilometres away, across open seas, in bad weather. He had to jettison every movable object from the plane and use his considerable skill to reach Australia and make a forced landing in 3 feet of water at Point Keats in the Northern Territory. He continued flying with distinction. At Ambon, he enabled 6 Hudsons to outshoot 6 Japanese Zeros, destroying as many as 3 enemy aircraft. For his work here and at Kapang, Sharp was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. In mid-1942, Sharp was promoted to Flight Lieutenant, and 6 months later was posted to No. 1 Operational Training Unit as an instructor. Sharp was reported to be one of the most popular officers at the Royal Australian Air Force Base East at Sale, Victoria, and was heavily involved in sport, including basketball, badminton, and rowing. He was later promoted to Squadron Leader. In early 1944, Sharp was transferred to No. 15 Squadron, operating out of Madang Airfield in New Guinea. Its role was to conduct anti-submarine patrols and attack Japanese positions, as well as to transport supplies and carry out reconnaissance patrols. The squadron, although based at Madang, had detachments based in Cairns and Townsville, among other places. At around 1:30 p.m. on the 11th of March 1945, Squadron Leader Sharp and his crew departed for Townsville from Amberley Airfield near Ipswich in Queensland. Before getting flight clearance, Sharp was told that the weather was not good, particularly in the Townsville region, but he wanted to try anyway, on the understanding that he would go to Rockhampton if the weather worsened. The NCO in charge of the flight control that day gave final clearance for takeoff, which Sharp acknowledged before taking off in a Beaufort A9566. The aircraft was never seen again. Later that evening, the alarms were raised, but none of the local airfields had received any news of Sharp's Beaufort. Searches proved fruitless. 5 days later, the news that Squadron Leader Arthur Sharp and his crew were missing reached Forbes. It was not until the end of the year that Arthur Sharp's widow and 2 children could be told that their husband and father was presumed to have been killed in an air accident. The other 4 crew members, Flying Officer Tristram Williams, Warrant Officer John Mossop and Ernest Thompson, and leading aircraftman Douglas Finley, were similarly presumed to have lost their lives. Flags were flown at half-mast at Forbes Town Hall when the news was heard, and Sharp was posthumously awarded a King's Commendation for valuable service in the air for his courage, skill, and coolness as a flying instructor. The crash site still has not been found, and today the names of the squadron leader Sharp and his crewmates appear on the Sydney Memorial at Rookwood. They are also listed on the Roll of Honour on my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Squadron Leader Arthur John Sharp, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. In the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words from the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and good evening.